Hey everybody, welcome back to the channel. Tabletop RPGs like Dungeons & Dragons are great fun to be had with friends. Though sometimes, as the adult world demands more and more of our free time, trying to find time to get together and play can sometimes be a bit of a hassle. Thankfully, with the internet and sites like Roll20 and Discord, it has gotten a bit easier to get around the hustle and bustle and get together virtually to play these great games. Though sometimes, even with all these tools at our fingertips, other players can be flaky or just show no interest in playing, even when they say they do. Much like what happened in this next D&D horror story. But first, I have to let you know, I found it. The Milk Bone of Truth. This delicious treat is said to hold all the secrets of the YouTube algorithm, but it's locked behind the like and comment barrier. So I need your help to like, comment, and share the video so that this barrier loses strength, and I can discover the YouTube universe's secrets. But with that out of the way, let's get right into the stories. Is communication really so hard? By Reddit user, Some Humoid K-Man. So, to preface, I want to say that I'm a new DM. I've constantly thought about running my own campaign, but thought it more of a dream than a reality. I didn't really think anyone I'm friends with would be overly interested in it. So imagine my surprise when my best friend, Doe, and her boyfriend, Ray, both bring it up to me one day that they wish they could do D&D, but neither of them want to DM. A dream match made in heaven, honestly. When I realized that, I instantly give up that in my spare time, I've been writing out my own world and little plot lines and stories. We then start discussing making a group. My biggest issue at the time was that I felt DMing for just 2 people wouldn't be worth it. I wanted a small group of 3 or 4 people. They agreed, and we put the idea on the back burner for a bit, while looking into getting a few more players. It didn't take much time before I managed to collect 2 more interested players, my own boyfriend, me, and a work friend, Faye, whom used to be a childhood friend, but we went our separate ways. Both expressed interest, my boyfriend being the one who originally encouraged me to write the plot lines and stories, just for fun, even if I didn't have a D&D group. So I had made the Discord group, arranged the schedule for us, and planned on our first ever Session 0 to go over everything. It should be noted that we are all new, but also adults, so I felt like we could easily adjust and arrange the game in a fashion that was fun for everyone. And honestly, it's been working out really well, aside from the one issue at hand, communication and attendance. At first, it was Faye who was the biggest problem. He had missed the first 3 mini-sessions we had scheduled. For context, due to the work, we had all agreed that once a week on the weekend would be more than doable. We were running one-shots, which weren't too hard for me to pull together, and were purposed to help all of us get used to the dynamic of the game, and let my friends feel out what classes they liked. Out of everyone, I would have had the most experience, from being an active RPer, and also dabbling in a small D&D group in high school for a couple of months. Faye finally manages to join his first session with us, in the middle of a one-shot that ended up being longer than one session. He makes it for the end, but misses the setup and overall lore of the plot, and is just kind of placed in the middle of everything. However, everyone adjusts nicely, and from there it was smooth sailing. I'll say now, I had already privately chatted with Faye, and asked if he was sure about wanting to be in the group, and that if his personal life was too busy, that's fine. I get it. He insisted he wanted to play, and was having fun, and would try harder. I think judging by the fact that I'm using this to rant, you can tell this wasn't the case. Things got particularly bad when I designed an apocalyptic campaign that was meant to be more lengthy and a bit more RP based. Not a full-fledged campaign, but one that would take a couple of sessions to work through, and hopefully give my friends the chance to develop character arcs. At this time, both Faye and me were now regularly missing our sessions. My boyfriend had been more direct with me and told me he simply wasn't feeling it and didn't think he would be fun to play with if he had to force it. So he never joined the apocalyptic campaign. Fair enough, I could understand. I was kind of annoyed because at first I was expecting him to be a more active part of the group, but I could get over it. Faye, on the other hand, always seemed to have something else going on. He had managed to make it to 2 of the sessions, the only 2 we ended up having, before the long breaks in between ultimately destroyed any and all interest myself, Doe, and Ray had in the story. Doe had been a bit hesitant, but had told me that the long breaks, sometimes 2 to 3 weeks, between sessions made it hard for her to stay involved, and I agreed. So we ended up canning the entire thing. Again, I messaged Faye, and asked if he actually was invested in the group, and that it was totally fine if D&D wasn't really his thing, or if he wasn't having fun, he didn't have to stay on my account. Again, he insisted he was sorry, but there was a lot of things happening, with celebrations between his friends and special events, but that was now coming to a close, and he should have more free time ahead. He wanted to stay. Some of his reasons were perfectly valid to me, but others seemed more like excuses, and the longer this went on, the more it felt like D&D was just a backup if he couldn't find anything else to do. One excuse he gave was that he had to help a friend move. However, I had been on Discord all day, and he was online with a status saying he was playing games until the early evening. I don't know a single person who decides to move out of their house after 5 p.m. Then, around an hour before our regular sessions would start, he went offline. Needless to say, I felt a bit suspicious and bitter, but said nothing about it to him. I mean, I guess he could have gone to help move his friend at like 7 p.m., but that seems kind of weird to me. Another reason that threw me for a loop was when Doe had told me she wouldn't be able to make it to a session because her house would be going under renovation that weekend. She told me Friday, privately, when it had been confirmed, but the session was set to be Saturday. I threw an at everyone in the Discord to tell them that the session would be moved to next weekend. That's when Faye decided to tell me that he had decided to take an extra shift, so moving sessions worked perfectly for him since he couldn't make it either. Again, we work together. He talks to me at work. He's talked to me about D&D at work. He never mentioned anything until that evening, when I made the mention. All he knew was that we were still on for Saturday. It rubbed me the wrong way, and I was growing increasingly annoyed with his absences. Most of my annoyance came from this feeling that he has little interest in the group. I am an adult. I just want him to be direct with me. It doesn't make any sense to me that he constantly says he enjoys D&D and has a great time, yet he never makes it a priority or hardly ever comes. I've talked to him multiple times about it, and it's starting to feel more like he wants me to kick him, instead of being the one to tell me he wants to leave. It's been expressed before that timing is very flexible. Myself, Doe, and Ray are okay to do sessions at any time on Friday, Saturday, or Sunday. All I need is a heads up so I can let the others know. Despite this, when Faye cancels, there's never a compromise. Never a, quote, "Hey, I have plans Saturday evening. Can we do session in the morning or maybe Sunday instead?" It's always, quote, "Hey, I can't make it this weekend. Sorry." It's driving me crazy. In the past, I have complained before to Faye how one of my biggest pet peeves is how people like to dance around me instead of being direct. I hate it when people refuse just to tell me no, or tell me they're simply not interested. I've even asked Doe and Ray if I came across as someone who is hard to say no to, and they've told me that they think it's mostly a fact of people not wanting to hurt my feelings. So I've expressed to the group that my main priority is that they enjoy themselves, and I want them to be comfortable. If they have any issues, I want them to be able to come to me about it. And if I, as the DM, do something they don't like, I want to be told right away. I want my players to know they can tell me no, or they can tell me if they're losing interest or not having fun. As a DM, it's no fun to me if my friends aren't enjoying it. Finally, I decided that Faye might be best as a side character. He can play when he has the time, but I won't give his character any super important hold where we would need him in order to continue the story. It just felt like the most reasonable thing to do. Instead, I decided to ask another friend, Zoe, if he'd be interested in joining. The plan was that Zoe would hopefully fill that spot Faye and me left actively. As said beforehand, with only Doe and Ray, 2 players didn't seem worth a full session. I mentioned to Zoe about the group a while ago, and he had expressed interest. At the time, I told him the group was full, but if a spot becomes available, he'd be the first to know. He eagerly joined the group, and despite being an active RPer himself, told me he had never played D&D and was a little nervous. I told him not to worry, we were all pretty new, and that I would jump into a call with him and help him with anything he needs. Halloween comes, and I'm ecstatic to do a spooky one-shot, as I love horror and suspense. I help Zoe with his character creation, we jump into Roll20, and I show him the basics, and we go over anything else he's unsure about. The first part of the session goes amazingly. Everyone makes it, Zoe fits right in as a comic relief rogue, and overall, it's a great time. It gets late, and we decide to continue the next day to finish it off. The next day comes, and we're waiting on Zoe. He pops in at the beginning, but unfortunately, he ends up losing connection and vanishes from the call. Some jokes are made about how the ghost got him, and we wait for about 15 minutes to see if the issue fixes itself, and he makes his way back. Sadly, he does not, so we continue without him. Everything went swimmingly, and the next day Zoe asked me how it went. He then tells me how sad he is his internet shitted out on him, and that he had a lot of fun playing, and he was really looking forward to the next session. He seemed really invested, and I was glad. Noted. We had to change some timings because Zoe is in a different time zone, but it was easily enough adjusted. We just moved start time up a couple hours. Finally, Doe approaches me and tells me she's okay to do more one-shots, since Zoe is new, but she's starting to get bored with it. She wants to be able to grow a character and level up past 3 or 4. Originally, I had planned for them to already be in a long-running campaign, but with Zoe just introduced, I was worried about him not having the same luxury of being able to explore classes to see what he actually liked to play. I end up PMing him and asking if he would be okay with jumping into a full campaign now. I mentioned that if he ends up hating his character, we can work out a way for him to change into something else, and he says he's fine with it. So I launched the mention in Discord. I arranged for another session 0 before we get into it so we can discuss things, and Faye manages to join the session. My boyfriend decides he's not interested, and since we live together, I can just fill him in afterwards. A little annoying, but he's not wrong. A privilege of living with the DM, I suppose. Zoe, on the other hand, is nowhere to be seen. After 10 minutes of waiting, I ping him. A couple minutes after, he replies and says he's sorry. He ended up on the other side of town at a gig and won't be able to make session 0. I contemplate canceling, but we have 3 of the 4 lives with me, so I ultimately decide to continue. We discuss everything. I go over boundaries with them, and what kind of environment I'm imagining. I express again that if I do anything that they don't like, or that makes them uncomfortable, to tell me immediately, and I'll adjust. We go over basic rules that beforehand we had adjusted, but now felt like we should follow as stated by the books. General Session 0 stuff. Absences are brought up, and again, I drill in that timing is fairly flexible, and that I want to avoid the same issue we had with the Apocalypse campaign. I want people to be here weekly. Although I feel like it was really obvious, I don't address anyone directly about it. I just express my concerns about it, and that I hope that we can become more regular. Session 0 ends off on a good note, and I feel like a lot that needed to be said was said. Then the first session of the main campaign comes. So he tells me a day before he hasn't had time to make a character and won't be able to join tonight. I tell him it's no problem, but session is actually tomorrow, so he still has time if he wants to. He still hasn't even joined the Roll20. Me has been having a stressful time the past few months and tells me he won't be coming either, which leaves Doe, Ray, and Faye. A group of 3 is fine, and we're all excited to play, so we start. Me made it seem like he was interested, so I planned for him, as well as Zoe, to have a chance to be integrated next session. This week was our latest session. Halfway through the week, Faye tells me that he can't make it to D&D because his friends forced plans on him, despite knowing he has prior engagements on Saturday. Zoe hasn't talked to me since last week when he told me he didn't have the time to make a character. I messaged him a day before to see if he still planned on coming. He still hasn't responded to me. The only 2 who come are my MVPs, Do and Ray. We talk extensively about what to do about this, and how it makes no sense that the others tell me all the time that they enjoy the game, they're having fun, and that they want to continue, and yet they can't seem to give a single fuck about consistency. In the end, we decided to try doing a session with just the two of them. Instead of the main story, I make up some side quests and exploration for them to do, and plan to make some backups where they can get to know the NPCs better. Instead of experience, I reward them with in-game items. All in all, it went a lot better than I expected, and I'm happy to do it again in the future for them. However, now I'm sitting here stewing over everything else. I can't tell if it's even worth keeping the group when only two of them seem actually invested. I don't know how else to talk to my problem players, because it feels like at this point, I'm just talking to a wall. I have literally no other issues with these guys, other than the fact that they rarely show up to a session. I have no one to replace them with, and now I'm left wondering if it's really even worth continuing, when I'm certain only Do and Ray will know what's going on. I'm growing exhausted playing babysitter, and wondering if there's something else I could be doing to entice them more. Rant over. Thanks for reading. It always helps to write these things out for me. TLDR. Players insist that they love the game and are enjoying themselves. Yet, only 2 out of the 5 actually show up regularly. The others have constant excuses for why they can't play. Having players that constantly miss sessions can be pretty stressful, especially when a DM puts so much time and effort into creating the world, NPCs, quests, and everything else that goes into a great campaign. Though, real life is a thing, and someone having to skip a session every now and then is to be expected. But it does seem like Faye and me just didn't seem interested in making any effort to attend. Maybe OP should lay down some ground rules for the game. As an example, in my current campaign, we have the rule that if you can't make a session, you have to let everyone know a day or two ahead of time, not the day of. Though with a little bit of wiggle room. Also, we've already had games where another player couldn't make it, but we were doing side quest stuff, so another player took control of that character for that session, and then we just catch them up on what happened. Or OP could just run a campaign for the 2 players that seem the most interested. 2-player campaigns can be fun, and if you have a little trouble with encounter scaling, you can always run a DMPC, granted if it's done right. Though, I would love to hear your thoughts. What would you do in an OP situation? Have you ever had a case where players just wouldn't show up to games? And if so, how did you handle it? If you have a story that you would like to be read on the channel, feel free to comment your story below in the channel subreddit r/DnD Doge, or even just DM me on Twitter. As always, I appreciate all of you, and I hope all of you help me get this milk bone. Until next time.